everyone, I've got a quick technique for you relating to a video that I put out just a week or so ago showing you how to make copy paper almost translucent with clear embossing powder. Now when I did this, I did it with a butterfly, but this time I want to show you how to make flower petals with the same technique. They look absolutely adorable and really easy to do as well. Now this card here, I've used hand cut flower petals. So I've simply drawn myself a rough flower shape, large, medium, small, and then even smaller, and done this technique. But I'm going to show you using some dies this time. You can use either or depending on the size of the flower you want and whether or not you've actually got floral dies. So as I said before, we're going to be using copy paper. So this is just the regular paper that you put in your printer, really nice and thin. Ideally, the cheaper the better. So get using that paper that maybe it's actually too thin for some of your printing. Use that. I'm going to cut 4 of these floral dies, and I can't even remember the name of the dies. I've had these years. Hopefully you'll have something similar in your stash. Now because I'm only cutting copy paper, I've folded this in 2 because I know that it's going to cut through absolutely beautifully, and it just speeds up the time it takes to create these flowers. Now I'm going to add some colour to my petals. If we look at this one, I added a peachy pinky colour in the centre. This time I'm going to do a pale blue just for a little bit of difference. Any colour that matches your project, or just leave them white if you're just trying this out. So I'm just going to take an alcohol based pen and I'm going to flick some colour out from the centre towards the edges of the flowers. Now I'm only keeping this in the centre. In fact, this pen has pretty much dried up, so I'll probably have to get another one. You can mix and match your colours within the layers, that's absolutely fine. So now I've got my colour laid down, it's time to make these really look like glass. So I'm going to take some embossing ink. Now lots of people have told me you don't have to use embossing ink for this. If you prefer to keep your pads fully saturated and not use as much ink, you can use something like glycerin. So I'm just going to press each of my copy paper petals starting at the front, but it doesn't matter, you could go to do the front and the back anyway, but press it all into the pad and then set that aside onto a heat resistant mat while we do the others. You can do these one at a time if you prefer, but I like to speed up my crafting as much as possible and just get these all inked first and then do all the powder second. Once the flowers have all been coated with a layer of clear embossing ink, you want to put over some clear embossing powder. So for this, I'm just going to sprinkle it over each one onto a scrap of cardstock so that I can reuse the excess powder. Just use a pair of tweezers, pick that up and lay it back on my heat resistant mat ready for melting. And then repeat this with the other 2. I'm going to press these into the excess powder instead of pouring it on top. Make sure you've got everything covered. And the same with this 4th one. Now I'm just going to move my powder out of the way for a moment while I heat set these. So I'm taking a craft heat gun and I'm just going to hold them over the top. Now you may want to use a pair of tweezers or a pokey tool to hold them still, but in general, if you're just heating from directly above, you shouldn't have any issues with them blowing around. As you can see with these ones, we've already got quite a bit of translucency there, but we're going to build that up even more by popping the back side, the reverse side, into our embossing ink and into our powder and coating that side too. So in exactly the same way as we just did, we're going to press into the powder, ensuring you get the tips of the petals. That's most important because that's really the bit that you're going to see on these bottom layers. And then tapping over here into the powder. And laying down ready to heat set. Now do bear in mind when you heat that second layer, the layer underneath is likely to remelt as well, or at least get soft. This is why I'm working on a silicone mat, because this way if it does melt, it's not going to stick to the mat, and as it cools I can easily peel it back off again. Now when you lift these up, as I say, absolutely beautiful, delicate florals, but we are not finished there. We've still got some additional detail to add into each of these petals. So I've just zoomed in for this next bit a little because this bit is where we add in that beautiful detail that's a little bit harder to see from a distance. Once these have completely cooled, and you can choose which is your back, which is your front, as you can see the colour through both. We're going to start just laying some folds into each of the petals, and you want to do this from the centre out. So just folding, cracking, creasing, scrunching even. You'll find you're actually cracking open that clear embossing, and you're revealing kind of the white paper underneath almost. So if I just squeeze this one, as you can see there, we've now got some lovely veins coming through these petals. So just work your way through each of the petals on each of the layers, just doing the same technique round and round. You do want to be very careful when you're doing this because this is a very delicate material. There is the tendency for it to tear if you're a little bit harsh with it, so just do it gently. You don't need to apply a lot of pressure to create this cracking. And once you've been round one entire flower, you can go ahead and do the rest of the layers. Now, one of the bonuses of this technique as well is if you're not keen on the amount of cracking and creasing that you've done, you can take your heat gun back to that flower, remelt the embossing powder and start all over again with very little in the way of damage done to the petals. So now I'm going to layer my petals up. So I'm just going to use a hot glue gun because I know this is clear and it will stick to the heat embossing. So a small dab there, stagger my petals, just press down in the center like so, and then the same for these ones too. Now while that glue's drying, I'm just going to lift up my petals and shape them, but you can make them a lot more flat if you're worried about something like postage, for example. Now for the center of the flower, my favorite thing to do is use some tiny beads of any color. I'm going to use black, and put a glue dot onto a silicone mat. So this needs to be as large as you want the center of your flower to be. There we go. And then I'm going to pour over, while the glue's wet, these beads, and just leave that for a moment or two for that glue to completely dry. Once the glue dot has dried, the beads will be stuck to it, so you can lift it off the sheet, put a tiny little bit more hot glue onto the reverse, and press that down in the center of your flower. And there we've got a really beautiful textured glass-like flower that you can put onto absolutely any project. This is simply made from copy paper, some colouring pens, but you could also use something like blending ink as well, and whatever centre of the floral you like. I've then put some die cut leaves behind on this particular project, but again, you could even do your leaves with the vellum-like appearance using copy paper if you wanted. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget, of course, to like and subscribe and leave me a comment and let me know what you think of this technique and if you'll be trying it out. Take care, everybody. I'll see you again soon.